today is the first day of our summer 7-day session, the 12th of January 2014. And I'm going to be reading and commenting on stories from a new book, just came out last November. It's called The Hidden Lamp, Stories from 25 Centuries of Awakened Women. And it's edited by Florence Kaplow and Susan Moon. And it's sort of modelled on a koan collection. There are exactly 100 stories in this, and each of them has a commentary by a contemporary teacher, woman teacher. And it's really, its purpose is to redress a balance. If you look at the classical koan collections, the Blue Cliff Record, the Book of Equanimity, and the Gateless Gate, they are very, very, very few female protagonists in them. And so this collection is to present the stories that do exist, and there are many of them. The editors actually had about 200 stories when they finished collecting them from all kinds of sources, and had to eliminate a lot of them. In the foreword, they talk about this imbalance. They say most well-known Zen stories from these three books that I've mentioned before. As the sorry, I'm on the wrong page here. They say we call the book The Hidden Lamp because while the lamp of Buddhist women's wisdom has been burning through the centuries, its light has been hidden from view. In this time, more than ever, we all need that light to guide our way. Many of the more familiar Buddhist and Zen stories are about monks living in monasteries. You will meet all kinds of people on the spiritual path. Not here in this book, in other words. You will meet all kinds of people on the spiritual path. Not just monks and nuns and teachers, but also husbands and wives, teenagers, hermits and cooks, courtesans and uppity grandmothers. Yes, this is a book that features women, but there are men here too in almost every story. It's a book of human stories, human teachings, which is of course the case with the classical koan collections too, even though they are mostly men in them, they speak to all of us. They continue, the book addresses an absence for both men and women within Buddhism and most other religious traditions for that matter, the invisibility of women ancestors and their wisdom. In every family we have both grandmothers and grandfathers. If we heard only the wisdom of our grandfathers, something in our hearts would be incomplete. It's the same in the Dharma. And I think here of the Zen expression, grandmotherly kindness, and this brings us to our theme for the session of kindness, that there are, in the Zen text they talk about two different styles of teaching. This grandmotherly kindness, which is generous, forthcoming, open-handed, laying it out for the student. And this is contrasted with, I think it's fair to say what's probably more common in Zen, is a kind of a holding back, a giving nothing Giving nothing because, of course, ultimately there is nothing to give. Each student has everything, and that's the purpose of this other kind of teaching, is to help the student to realize that he or she has everything. But it is a matter of balancing these two, and we can get out of balance and too much on the side of the holding back. And that's what Norman Fisher writes about in his little introduction to this. He connects the almost exclusively male characters in the koan collections with this non-grandmotherly kind of teaching. He calls this style terse, uncompromising, powerful, full of slang and humour, and sometimes, but not always, useful, and in general withholding. The stories themselves, the koans, are mostly very brief, and they're drawn from often slightly longer stories in the lamp records, which are just the records of the masters, and they're often made very brief so that we, as working on them, have to bring out and tease out the kind of context, and that's one of the powerful ways in which they teach. But there is a kind of withholding quality to them, and also in being so terse and just really focusing on the nub, they can sometimes make the characters in them seem very lofty, very advanced. We don't get often the limitations, the shortcomings. We get the sort of the heroic version of the story. He continues, the traditional collections often make reference to two opposing but complementary styles of teaching, the grasping way and the granting way. I haven't heard these expressions before, perhaps they're his own, but the grasping way refers to this withholding, giving nothing approach, and the granting way would equate with the grandmotherly kindness. He says the grasping way, the withholding way, gives you nothing because there is nothing to give. Whatever there is to be gotten must be hard won through struggle. This is the way of the solitary hero. The granting way is the kindly way of clear and helpful teaching, in which even your confusion and suffering is part of the path. Practice always takes place in the context of others, so awakening is not something you get as much as the relief you experience when you recognize that your life is always right, even when it is difficult, and always shared. It is likely that in actual practice throughout the centuries, Asian monastics experienced both ways, according to temperament and circumstances. But the classical collections seem not to reflect this. At least for the Western reader, lacking cultural and literary context, the granting way seems more or less absent in the style and presentation of these old tales and commentaries. Now that the hidden lamp has seen the light of day, this absence is filled finally with presence, with bodies, voices, emotions, lives. Included here, that is, are not only the long missing stories of women, but along with them a spirit and attitude of open-handed teaching that the commentaries and the text as a whole reflect. And I think that's true, that this because of the way the editors have put it together, it does have more of a quality of nearness to our own lives and to our own experiences. More of the heart side of our experience. Now, Norman Fisher makes this very important point here about our own confusion and suffering as part of the path. If we only focus on the side of transcendence, of going beyond our suffering, then we can become discouraged. It's very important that we understand that practice involves not only times when there is this direct touching into the transcendent, the deathless, but the way that we get to that point, the way that that opens for us, is through our seeing clearly how our delusions work, how our ego functions, seeing it clearly and seeing through it, seeing it's not half as solid as it appears to be. That's wisdom too. And there's no way to do that except through going through, experiencing our suffering, our shortcomings, our blind spots. The editors in their introduction also mention a reaction that they got from people sometimes when they would present these stories and koans. And some of them are very much classical, in the form of a classical koan, and others are more stories that are more fleshed out and have more of a teaching story, which of course is an ancient form of teaching. And they come from China, from the classical Chan, but also there was a surge of new koans created in Japan, and especially in the Kamakura period. And many of these, a surprisingly large number of these, had women characters in them. And they're mostly unfamiliar, at least to me. Many of them I haven't come across before. So it's really wonderful now to have these stories. And then the editors also include some stories from the sutras, the Pali canon, as well as the Mahayana, and some anecdotes from the present day, or actually from just recently, or teachers who have passed away, but who are modern teachers. And we're going to look at one of those today. And we'll also be reading some from the commentaries of the different women who've been included and invited to comment in this book. But lastly, just from their introduction, just something that they say about when they introduce these stories to others. She says, as we have shared these stories and koans with our fellow practitioners, we have noticed that some people feel a wave of anxiety at the word koan. They associate koans with something mystifying and impenetrable, with right or wrong answers, and with grimacing Zen masters holding big sticks. But these stories are intended as mirrors for your own life and practice. Each story is a gift from one woman ancestor to you, whether you are male or female. You can sit quietly with it, find inspiration or encouragement within it, or take it all the way to the heart of your life. Only you can know exactly what the gift may be. So we'll be approaching these stories not so much as classical koans, but as teaching stories. And the thing to do is just take from them what you need. open to them. Open the heart and the mind, and see how they work on you. I'm going to look at a couple of stories today. One is from the Pali Sutras, and the other one is a modern story. Here's the story. Anoja was a great queen at the time of the Buddha. Her husband, King Mahakapina, journeyed to hear the Buddha's teaching and became a monk along with many of his attendants. He sent a messenger back to his court with the news, and when Anoja asked if the king had sent a message for her, the messenger said, "He gives all his royal power to you. Enjoy the glory and pleasure." But instead, Anoja said, the Buddha could not have arisen only for the benefit of men, but for women as well. So she and her attendants also made the journey to hear the Buddha and to ordain. Mahakapina, now a monk, was present, but the Buddha, using his magic powers, made the king invisible. When the queen and her attendants heard the Buddha speak, they all became stream enterers. Then the Buddha asked Anoja, "Would you rather seek the king or seek the nature of the self?" Without hesitation, she replied, "The nature of the self." So in this story we have a king and a queen, husband and wife. And the king goes off with his court to hear the teaching of the Buddha, leaving his wife and her attendants back in the palace. And he's so moved by the teaching that he and his followers all become monks. And he just sends a message back to say to his wife, sort of saying, "Hi, honey, I've become a monk." And that's how it is. But at the same time as doing this, he hands over all his power. He says, all my royal power, which you can enjoy the glory and pleasure of it. No doubt this queen was used to a lot of comfort, even luxury, status, used to ordering people around and getting what she wanted. But she leaves all that behind and goes also to see the Buddha. The woman who's commenting on this story, Sandy Boucher, quite a well-known writer in Buddhist circles, says, Anoja realized, even from afar and never having seen the Buddha before, that he was offering something more precious than all the wealth in her kingdom, more powerful than all the freedoms and powers that she had been taught to cultivate. When I am most clear, I also understand that in giving up my attachments, I attain true freedom from suffering. Everyone here in this room has done this to some degree, given up attachments to come to Sesshin, given up a week of holiday time, really made an investment of time and funds coming along for this Sesshin week, which is not that easy. It's by no means luxurious. We have to get along with less sleep, much less choice in what we eat and what we do, when, and we have to work with physical pain, sitting, often struggling with emotional pain as well. So we all understand to some degree or another that it's worth it to give up our comforts and do this work. If only it was so simple just to do that once and come to Sesshin, but it's not a one-time thing. All kinds of comforts, small ones perhaps, but comforts nevertheless beckon to us even when we're in Sesshin. Our bed in a rest period, food. It's amazing how big a thing food can become when so many other things are simplified or eliminated. We can start thinking about it long before the meal, the anticipation, planning. But not only these comforts of the senses, also our opinions. We can take comfort in them because they can give us some sense of solidity, some reassuring kind of feeling of rightness. Even our pain can, in a perverse kind of way, be comforting, because at least it's familiar. It can feel safe to stay in where we know what's going on. Fear can often come up strongly for us when we're moving out of that zone of comfort. Even panic. When we get to the edge of some of what is familiar and known to us, and we may find we do pull back from that edge many times, but we have to go into that fear to go through it. So practice really involves our turning away repeatedly from the allure of different kinds of comfort, and sometimes not turning away. But even if we do turn to familiar comforts, we always get another chance in the next moment to turn towards what is fresh and alive. And that can mean just recognizing, I'm getting caught up in numbing myself. And to have that awareness, of course, is to be less than completely numb. We can understand why Anoja, this queen, might be motivated to turn away here, because she just had a pretty powerful experience of loss. She'd got this message that her husband essentially wasn't coming home. In the story, when she gets to comes before the Buddha, he uses his magic powers to make her husband invisible. From you can ask what the why he did this, and why in the story what meaning it might have, what allegorical meaning it might have for him to do this. Was it so she wouldn't be distracted, so that she could hear the Dharma? Or we can take it as a depiction of what was going inside her at that moment when she heard the teaching. Perhaps she stopped looking outside herself, stopped falling into dualism of subject and object, me here and the king over there. It's said that she and her followers all became stream enterers. This is a very advanced level of attainment. In the glossary it says stream enterer, also called stream winner, is a person who has attained the first of the 4 stages on the path of an arhat. A stream enterer has eradicated greed, hate and delusion, and will move forward to nibbana within 7 lifetimes. So it's the point where you reach where there's no turning back. So it's a very lofty stage. What this points to is that the Queen and her ladies in waiting were ripe. That they must have had many lifetimes preparing themselves for this encounter. And then the final part of this story is the Buddha asking her, would you rather seek the king or seek the nature of the self? He knows what the state of her mind is. He can see it. But he asks this kind of testing question, perhaps so that others may learn from her response. And without hesitation, she says the nature of the self. She didn't just come so that she could be with the king. That's clear from what's happened. It doesn't mean that she didn't love her husband anymore. But clearly she wasn't attached in the way that she probably had been before. What she's expressing is her insight that all relationships are impermanent. She's just had a very powerful experience of that when she got that message from the king. Her world was turned upside down. She had a powerful, direct experience of impermanence. She understood that she could not rely on any relationship for her happiness. She probably also saw that she could be surrounded by every comfort, every luxury, and still experience loss. Still have the carpet ripped from beneath her feet. The second story we're going to look at is from the USA, 20th century. Joko Beck and the Thought of Enlightenment. It's very short. Joko Beck had finished a talk and asked if there were any questions. A young man raised his hand and bluntly asked, "Are you enlightened?" Her response was immediate. Laughing, she said, I hope I should never have such a thought." It's the story. Many people, I'm sure, have read Joko Beck's book, Everyday Zen. Really was quite a revelation when it came out. Quite iconoclastic, very, very down to earth. No nonsense. Joko Beck was she was a concert pianist. Had, I think, 4 children, and didn't take up Zen training until her 40s, when she trained under Mayazumi Roshi on the West Coast. She was actually only 5 years younger than Roshi Kapleau, so born in 1917 and died quite recently in 2011. She founded the San Diego Zen Center in 1983. For this one, I'm also going to read the commentary, which I think is very helpful and moving. And this is by Peg Stuyvesant. There's a little bit of biographical material in here about her. It says she trained with Joko Beck and is a Soto Zen priest in the lineage of Suzuki Roshi. She is the co-founder of Appamada, a center for contemporary Zen practice and inquiry in Austin, Texas. She writes, I have thought about this exchange many times over the years since I first witnessed it. I had not been studying with Joko very long, and everything she said surprised me. The young man in this encounter is like the professor in the story of Nun In serving tea. This is the story that made a big impression on me. It's the very first one in Zen Flesh, Zen Bones by Paul Retz. Nun In, a 19th century Japanese Zen master, was visited by a university professor who came to inquire about Zen. Nun In politely served his guest, pouring tea into his cup until it was filled to the brim. He continued pouring, overflowing the cup, until the professor finally said, "It's overfull, no more will go in." "Like this cup," said Nun In, "you are full of your opinions and speculations. How can I show you Zen unless you first empty your cup?" The young Zen student in the story seemed to be asking Joko a question, but his head was already filled with his own opinions and speculations about enlightenment. He was no doubt wondering, can this teacher really help me? Can I trust her? Does she have any credentials? So much is bound up in the student's simple question, who should I follow? Who can help me get enlightened? And this is understandable that to have these questions, to want to have a sense of whether the teacher is qualified or not. She says, of course it is important to have discernment when we work with a teacher. Still, beyond the issue of qualification or capacity is the nature of the relationship itself. Joko's playful, humorous response changed the entire field of her relationship with the student and with everyone who was there. But it opens to a much deeper mystery. As I heard Joko's response, I marveled at her words, and I still do. They echo the renegade Zen master Ikkyu. Quote, "I don't remember making a mistake called enlightenment." why is enlightenment a mistake? Well, because we've already turned it into a concept. Pretty much as soon as we say the word enlightenment, we've turned it into a concept. Of course, we don't want to fall into the extreme of denying it either, but we do have to be careful not to reify enlightenment. And of course, because what comes with that is what Chogyam Trungpa called spiritual materialism. We then, now that we've made it into this thing, then we put a lot of energy into trying to get it. Liberation comes from our letting go of our ideas about ourselves, seeing through them as just being ideas. The point is that there's no I to be enlightened, and people who go around claiming I am enlightened are not to be trusted, really, because it's a contradiction in terms. In the teaching on the 6 parameters, there's a way of seeing these parameters which is known as the threefold purity. The parameters are basically different ways of cultivating our bodhicitta, necessary ingredients in bodhisattvahood. And the 6 are generosity, ethical, non-harming behavior, forbearance, effort, meditation, and wisdom. And the threefold purity is practicing each of these parameters, but with the understanding that ultimately there's no one practicing them, no practice that is being done, and no, I think the third one is no outcome, no result coming. So if we apply this to enlightenment, then understanding that there's no enlightened person, there's just a process, a flow there. Nor is there some kind of a project that gets us there. If we have ideas about what this project is, that it should be a certain way, that if we're awakening then we should be peaceful or mellow or whatever, heroic, then those expectations will get in the way. We've got to give up all the expectations we have about ourselves, about the process. Just work on presence. Also give up all expectations of outcome. It's fairly common to think that, to get into this idea that, well, if I attain enlightenment, then and everything will be clear sailing after that. I won't have any problems, any difficulties. You just need to drop all of that. Peg Stuyvesant continues with a story about, very much related, about how she experienced Jochebed's teaching. My own encounters with Joko were just as unexpected and penetrating. Early in our spiritual work together, when I was a single parent, juggling 3 jobs and a full-time graduate program, she asked me what had brought me to Zen practice. I knew that this was not a casual question. For weeks I reflected on it, and finally I came in for Dai-san, like Dog-san, a private interview, met her piercing gaze and said, truthfully, I just want to be a better mother for my son. She tartly replied, well, that's a story. I was startled into wonder and, for just a bit, completely lost my bearings. I barely managed to stand, bow, and leave the little room where she was even then ringing the bell for the next student. I felt as though she had suddenly tossed a pitcher of ice water in my face. But at some level beyond language, I knew she was right. My story was suddenly quite clear. The core belief that I was perpetually failing at some performance of being a good mother, despite having neither models nor even any idea what such an ideal might be. No, I was always just coming up short, always scrambling to improve, and still failing. In fact, deep in my heart, I held this lacerating belief as a virtue, a sign of both my noble aspiration and the humble recognition of my terrible failings. It was poignant and heartbreaking. Yet this very story was actually coming between my son Ben and me, a filter through which I was always anxiously and apologetically and sadly viewing our marvelous life together. That single retort in Joko's tiny Dai-san room changed the entire course of my relationship with Ben. Simply staying present with him without the story was infinitely more challenging, and yet the intimacy it opened was vast and luminous. We live with a yearning for something always just out of reach. Without it, we would never come to practice Zen in the first place. We have many ideas about our practice, about ourselves, and about the world. Our cup is full. Like every other inexperienced Zen student, I was striving to be awakened. I wanted to be a light in the world, to have a genuine insight, true compassion, and profound wisdom, to offer something truly needed. Care for others that was real care. There is nothing wrong with a heartfelt aspiration for awakening, of course. But I hope I should never have such a thought. The ringing clarity of her words illuminates our secret agenda, our constant negotiations, calculations and manipulations, our efforts to finesse life as it is, and reveals our hidden longing for enlightenment as ultimate comfort, confirmation, achievement or holiness. The demolition of this self-centered dream is the revelation of the true path. We have so many ideas about ourselves, about who we are, what we are. Secret ideas often that we never tell anyone, but which shape the way we experience ourselves and our lives. We may think we're a failure or unlovable, incompetent, flawed in some kind of fundamental way. Or it may be quite a positive thing. We think we're a very kind person, very on the ball, professional. But these too can be kinds of armor that we wear, so that we don't fully receive what is coming to us. Or it can be more couched in how we think about other people. So and so should treat me this way, not that. I'm deserving of more. We need to see beyond these constricting notions about ourselves, about awakening, about practice. Empty our cup. We do this each time we come back to the breath or the koan. Each time we do that, we're snipping our ties to those alluring comforts. We're liberating ourselves and others when we let go of these notions. We'll stop here and recite the 4 vows.